Welcome back to another episode of Conduct Detrimental. I'm your host, Taryn Sharma. With me today is the great and the married Mike Lawson. How's it going, Mike? Just back from Ireland.
That's right, Taryn. Yeah, took a little bit of a hiatus. Finally finalizing some wedding planning abroad. Did a small ceremony with close family out in Ireland, and did a little honeymoon in Italy as well. So good to be back, but it was a lot of fun.
I unfortunately could not make it, too dedicated to the grind, but I am very happy for you. That is awesome. We've got a jam-packed show today. Sports gambling. What's new, Mike? We've got Luis Ortiz, the Cleveland Guardians pitcher, under the microscope. We've got Malik Beasley, Detroit Pistons guard, who is currently under investigation. And we've, I think, got just a broader integrity crisis when it comes to sports since the proliferation of gambling. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about we've got to do our NIL, our roots stuff here. We've got the Opendorse annual NIL report that came out. And finally, we'll wrap up with couple other segments here at the end, so stay tuned for those. So let's start here, Mike. Luis Ortiz, he got traded in the offseason from Pittsburgh. He was pretty good last year. He was a breakout candidate, a guy that I have on my dynasty team. What can you tell us about this case and how it came up?
Yeah, so we've talked about this for years since sports gaming has really come to a head. We talked about something like this, and I'm going to talk about the micro bets and the prop bets and things like that, more on the scale of like college athletics and the.
And just, Mike, before you get started, I want to remind everyone that this segment is brought to you by Fan Kings. If you put in a $10 deposit on Fan Kings, you can get your first 3 prop bets free.
There you go. As long as you're not a professional athlete or a college athlete. We've talked about this before about like the vulnerability of college athletes and all the NIL stuff and things like that. But as we've seen over the last couple of years, we're just mentioning him too, Terry Rozier, Jonte Porter, all these professional athletes. We're going to talk about Malik Beasley as well, but now we have it's jumped over into the MLB world with Luis Ortiz, and what I find really fascinating, and I think sports gaming is one of the most heavily regulated and closely watched industries that we've seen over the last few years. You've got these betting integrity firms that are just monitoring everything that's happening in professional sports. And what we have is an alert that was sent in June regarding Ortiz's actions as they specifically related to particular micro bets, and the ones that were being flagged were results of first pitches. And what they were doing was they were referencing whatever the result of a first pitch would be, and then they cross-reference it to Luis Ortiz's games against 2 of them in June, against the Seattle Mariners and then against the St. Louis Cardinals. In the bottom of the second inning against the Mariners, he threw a first pitch slider that was just completely out of the zone.
He was basically spiking it.
Exactly. Basically just akin to completely airballing a free throw. Like it's different. I mean, with a slider, you could lose control, but this was just like really far out, out of the zone. And then same thing with the third inning against the Cardinals, just spiking a slider just far out of the zone. So those were flagged, where there were first pitch bets in Ohio, New York, and New Jersey. And since then, Major League Baseball has placed Ortiz on non-disciplinary paid leave through July 17th while they conduct these investigations. Taryn, what is the next step here? What do these investigations look like? Can Ortiz just say, "Hey, look, I just spiked the ball"? Obviously they're going to have to go through all of his transactions. They're going to look through any potential bets that he may or may not have placed, whether it was through him or through somebody else. But what's the next step here for him?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so you mentioned he's on administrative leave through the All-Star break, so through July 17th. And the crazy thing is that he was going to be pitching tonight. He was scheduled to pitch tonight. But the line here, I think, is pretty strong. Like Major League Baseball has shown that they're pretty serious about this. So you remember earlier this year, Tucupita Marcano, who played for the Pirates, I believe, and also played for the Padres. He had placed some 400 bets on baseball, lifetime ban. Uh, some other players who were in the minor leagues who were placing bets on baseball got 1 year suspensions. And in February, Pat Hoberg, who is was a great umpire, he was also fired for sharing a legal sports betting account with a friend who was betting on baseball, and he deleted messages that were key to the investigation. So he basically lied about it. I think it's the next step is that they, like you mentioned, going to go through all of his transactions. They're going to see who these individuals were who were placing the bets. And if there's a relationship there, I would not be surprised if Luis Ortiz will never pitch in the major leagues again. Because this, to me, is another level beyond what we're talking about in those situations. It's not only that he's uh, associated with people who are betting on the game, betting on baseball specifically, but then he's actively affecting the outcome of the game. And you could say, oh, these are just too early pitches. Like, what does it matter? I think just from an integrity standpoint, with all of these professional sports leagues being in bed with the legal gambling industry, they need to make examples out of people who are even a little bit affiliated with this, because otherwise I think that they are going to lose their credibility. And, we'll talk about the NBA and Malik Beasley in a second, but people already think that a lot of that is rigged, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty important that they set an example here, and Luis Ortiz is probably going to be made an example of, just like Marcano was.
Now, when you say, yeah, okay, so you're putting this akin to Marcano, who got a lifetime ban. So, that was going to be my question. Is like, do you think they'll give him the lifetime ban? Do you think that they will give him a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year suspension? Then no team, no matter what. Here's the thing: no team, I don't think a team's not going to pick him up. That's the other thing. Like,
He's
even
not
if,
good enough anyway.
yeah, true. Like,
Yeah.
even if there was some sort of 1 year suspension, 2 year suspension, whatever, then you have teams who just don't even want to deal with that. It's almost as if it is a lifetime ban. Anyways, Marcano was a lot different because that was 400 bets,
And he was doing it directly.
Directly, different types of bets, right? Where this is 5 bets where he's like, hey, I can make a few extra bucks by just spiking a ball. Could be treated a little bit differently. I know that they're not going to want to draw that precedent line where it's like, do they allow any of them and give you some sort of small suspension, or one and you're done type of deal, right? Obviously, we've seen that the latest on Pete Rose with his lifetime ban and the bets that he made on baseball, and posthumously he's now off the lifetime ban.
He had to die for that.
He has to die to get off it, right? Exactly. So you're right. I think that they have to come down with a strong fist, but I think what really fascinates me about all of this is the fact that they think they can get away with this, right? We saw this with the oh geez, I can't even remember the pitcher, the coach who was texting to
Brad Bohannon.
Yeah, that was different states, different sports books.
Ironically, in Ohio also.
Ironically, also in Ohio, yeah. And then you have these sports betting integrity firms that are catching this stuff. You're not going to get away with this. Everything is too digital. Everybody has all eyes on professional sports. You're not going to get away with it. So it's just silly for these athletes to even try to do this in this today's day and age.
Yeah, I mean, you're risking so much, and we'll talk about Malik Beasley and what he's going to lose probably as a result of this. But just real quick, you mentioned the watchdogs. U.S. Integrity is the one here that caught this, right? It wasn't the league, it wasn't the umpires, it wasn't a coach that caught that this was happening, because in the midst of a game, you're seeing some, 300, 400 pitches on each side. It's just not. I don't think that it sets off alarm bells that you spike one pitch in a couple of games.
Right.
But here, U.S. Integrity, the data dashboard there picked up that they had bets in these states on this discrete occurrence, these micro bets, as you mentioned, and was
I
able to
hate that. I
connect
hate that. I hate that word. I don't like
micro
micro
bets.
bets. It makes it seem so weird, like a micro transaction, like a penny stocks of bets.
Yeah, but these bets are growers, not showers, so they're micro bets, and U.S. Integrity was able to pick up on that pretty easily, and so I do think that that's pretty incredible and very important to if you're going to have this relationship between sports and gambling. And I think that a lot of us thought that it would be a good idea to have a lot of these things be more in the light than to be shady industries that maybe weren't being policed. This is what you have to do. And because of that, you have to make an example of them.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with Ortiz. I think MLB is going to come down on him pretty hard. But Malik Beasley, probably a slightly higher caliber of player, a guy that's been paid before, a
Yeah.
guy that's he's played well in the past. He was right up there for most threes in the league, I believe, last year,
He had a
and
great
was
bounce back year, and he was looking to get paid in the offseason as a free
about
agent.
to get a multi-year contract, as you mentioned, and uh, we just saw that the Pistons gave a significant contract to a similar caliber of player in Duncan Robinson. So possible, I think, here that that is a replacement for Malik Beasley, because Malik Beasley is in some trouble, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. Malik, I mean, we're going to talk about the gambling, but we're also going to talk about a lot of other financial problems. So, same thing. Malik Beasley, just like a few other basketball players in the last couple of years, Jonte Porter, Terry Rozier. Um, there's this, and what Jonte Porter was like, he had wire fraud and conspiring with gamblers. I mean, because all of the things that, if you have to do all of these things to try and hide it from these integrity companies and the league, like it's going to make it far worse for you. Betting, Luis Ortiz, like having a couple of bets to throw away some balls, not necessarily potential criminal exposure. You probably are going to have a lifetime ban or some sort of suspension or never pitch in the league again. You're ruining your career. What we're seeing on the NBA side is this conspiracy and wire fraud and all of this to hide these types of bets. It's making it far worse, and there's all these criminal implications with it. Terry Rozier, I think that's still going on right now. Regarding from 2023. Again, no charges have been filed against Terry or Malik Beasley yet, but there's investigations that are a federal gambling probe. Again, another weird, uh, thing that you have where these athletes are not just they're not just dealing with potential prop bets or micro bets or anything like that. It's like these schemes that they're doing to get away with some sort of gambling and working with bookies and things like that. Well, what we have here, as well as this gambling probe that's been filed, is Malik Beasley's clear financial struggle, which a lot of the times you find out that happens with gambling issues. You saw it with Otani's interpreter. He had significant financial problems, whether that's related or a direct cause of the gambling. I mean, it's one or the other. But Malik Beasley's had a lawsuit filed against him by his sports management group, the Hazan Sports Management Group. They are saying that they gave him a $650,000 marketing advance, which was supposed to be paid back. And this is just, the language in the lawsuit. They've received little more than drips and drabs of sporadic payments and vague promises to repay the balance over time. And this has been a couple of years now since this. They took him on as a client in November of 2023, and this lawsuit was filed in April of this year. So they're not seeing any repayment from that, and they're claiming $2.25 million in damages, as well as legal fees for this action, and they're claiming breach of contract for what they have with their deal with Malik Beasley. Now, on top of that, Taryn, we've also learned that he owes money to some other people of late. Who else does Malik Beasley owe money to?
Yeah, oddly, his wages were garnished by his dentist. He owed a lot of money to his dentist and to his barber. So it's nice that Malik Beasley was taking care of himself, but not at the cost of not being able to pay them back.
But what's interesting about that too was that these were small loans that his barber and dentist were giving to him. So he goes to Cairo Cuts, and he owed them $26,826.76. And then his dentist, Delicate Smiles, he paid them $34,389.70. And like you said, that payment was due to his wages being garnished by the Pistons to pay them back. Now, apparently, his barber lent him $15,000 in March of last year, and then April of this year lent him another $1,000, and then the next day lent him another $4,000. And he signed a promissory note, which is just like a private. It's like a private loan now. It's a loan agreement where he's agreed to pay back $30,000 to Delicate Smiles, and they also gave him a $20,000 advance. So it's just like this. I don't know if they're not looking into him or why a professional basketball player needs to take a loan out of a barber and a dentist. It seems strange to me. Obviously, it was probably to use their services. I'm guessing it's not like a straight, here's $30,000, do what you will.
Yeah, it's kind of like a financing arrangement.
Yeah, right. But still strange to me that you obviously you want the publicity maybe of having a professional athlete use your services in a barber and a dentist. But I mean, this is just it went south very fast, and now we've got Malik Beasley on the hot seat with a federal investigation, a lawsuit by his former marketing company, and then you've got these loan payments that were recently paid back, I think as of yesterday.
It's not just that he was a NBA player. I mean, this is a guy that was a first round pick. He was on a $6 million contract last year. He was on a shorter, smaller deal, a 1 year, $2.5 million with Milwaukee the year before. He had a 4-year, $60 million contract with the Wolves. He had his rookie deal, which is like 4 for $8. So this is a guy that's made a lot of money, and it's kind of unbelievable that you would have to finance dental work or a haircut.
Kind of a red flag, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so again, Karen, I pitched you the same question. I mean, obviously it's just an investigation. There's been no charges yet. We saw Jontay Porter. He was handed a lifetime ban from the league after he was making a number of prop bets on himself. Obviously, we don't know the specifics too much right now about Beasley, but how do you see this for the future of Beasley's career? He was a free agent. He was looking to sign potentially a multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal. So where does he go now?
Yeah, there were some discussions of a 3-year, $42 million extension with Detroit, which is a lot of money. I think he's going to be in big trouble. And it's for a similar reason than the one that you brought up with Jontay Porter. There's a federal investigation here. The Eastern District of New York is looking into this. And whenever you have the feds on you, I mean, Mike, you're an attorney. You can tell us. I mean, it's a very bad situation when you have federal investigators looking into you and looking to build a case. And similarly, so there was, there's civil lawsuits here as well. There's Jonte Porter was also dealing with civil litigation. So there are a lot of similarities here. The other point is that this is not Beasley's first time getting in trouble. He was suspended for 12 games on a felony gun charge just a couple years ago. Uh, this is a guy who's already been in the NBA's crosshairs. He's somebody who's now made a second, more glaring transgression. And again, I think similarly to what we saw with Porter, Marcano, what I think we'll see with Ortiz, this guy is going to get the hammer brought down on him if he is at all involved in this. And the situation, I think, is also strange, right? The specific stat that was gambled on being rebounds, under 2.5 on rebounds, and then he exceeds it. That's just odd to me, right? Because you would think that if a number surged, like a lot of people were betting on the other side of it, why would he then go ahead and surpass that? So he had 6 rebounds in that game. So is it because they were trying to throw them off the scent, or what's the basis behind that? So I think all of that is going to be dug up by federal investigators. They're some of the best at this, and again, really interesting here that it was the sports books that flagged this, just like it was U.S. Integrity that flagged the other points. It's the sports books that are kind of policing themselves. So even though this looks bad, it seems like it's mostly on the individuals and not on the sports books for being involved, because they seem to be policing it.
Yeah, very well. So I would agree that it's very important for these sports books to really show, and that's also a requirement of a lot of these states when they legalized gambling and allowed the contracts for a lot of these companies to come in is, okay, you're going to do this, but you're going to police this. This isn't going to be on us. This is going to be, if something is going wrong, you guys need to have an integrity, watchdog, as you called it, that is monitoring for any sort of illegal activity. That was the whole point of bringing sports gaming into the world, is that it is now transparent, like you said before, Taryn. There's no backdoor shady deals, illegal sports books, things. I mean, there probably still are, but it's now fully out in the open, and allow it to happen and regulate and monitor monitor everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything else here on sports gambling, or should we move on to NIL?
I don't know. I think we jump over to NIL.
Yeah. So I think anyone who listens to this show knows the House deal went into effect this week. The deals under the settlement, which were called either revenue sharing or licensing deals, depending on who you talk to, went into effect on the 1st of July of this year. Again, a lot of these were being signed well in advance with the anticipation that the settlement would be finalized, and now those are in effect. And a lot of schools and collectives were in a rush to give out new deals ahead of the framework being implemented on July 1st. So Opendorse released its annual NIL report, and it's pretty staggering. NIL collectives in June paid athletes 824% more than they did last June. They were front-loading these agreements. Athletes are projected to get some $2.75 billion in rev share and NIL this year. So, Mike, what do you make of that push, and then subsequently, do you think that things are going to change now that we have more of a solid system with a structure in place and some of these collectives being brought in-house?
Yeah, it was, I guess we can start to say we're moving out of the wild, wild west. I think for years we've been in that. We've coined that ourselves. We've called it that since July 1st of 2021. And here we are 4 years later, and NIL was still, if not more, crazy than it was when it first was released, and there was no governance whatsoever. And the NCAA took a hands-off approach. They push it to the federal government for potential federal bills. States had a race to the bottom of what they were going to do with collectives, what they were going to allow. Some states allowed schools to directly deal with their athletes. Some didn't. Some had stricter restrictions on collectives, and then you had recruiting issues. So we still have a lot of issues. There's still, I think there's still a overall generalization of chaos that's still happening with the NIL world. But what the House settlement did, and I think what a lot of collectives were realizing, was that they were going to start having to listen to governance again, and that the NCAA was going to start closing in based upon this settlement. And one of those things is caps. And they wanted to rush to the table. Like you said, they went up 825 or to 824% of this month compared to last month, because they knew that this House settlement we were on the precipice of it. And July 1st started the first year of cap, and they were going to have restrictions on everything. And moving things in-house means that these collectives not only had to listen to whatever the state legislators were doing, but now they are more restricted because of what the schools will actually allow these collectives to do. So you have a lot more authority, I guess you could say, that's now going to control what the next few years is going to look like. And that's what the rush was before the actual settlement. Now
Yeah.
there still are things that are kind of floating in the air of people who disagree with the settlement and whatnot, but we're here, and Opendorse laid out a significant amount of numbers. I like the breakdowns of like which, where the budget's being allocated for particular groups. Those poor specialists, those long snappers only getting 1.5%. But I encourage everyone. We're not going to talk about it in full detail here, but I encourage everybody to really go and take a look at what Opendorse has done and the projections for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Terem, what do you make of kind of the crescendo effect that we're seeing that Opendorse is saying? Do you see any sort of significant caps being made? What's the next kind of step for this?
Well, yeah, you mentioned, I think, the weight of authority that we expect to see with the College Sports Commission, and how this settlement is going to change the structure of things. But one thing that I found to be really interesting was the breakdown last year of commercial versus collective. So commercial is like the real NIL in quotes, and collective is like, we're paying you to be here. It's like basically recruiting money. Yep. And last year was the first year where we saw that they were about even. So we had last year, this is for 2024-25, about $957 million for commercial, and collective spent about $1.3 billion. So obviously that's going to change with the schools paying directly in 25 onwards. But it's really interesting, I think, that a market has developed for college athletes to take advantage of their name, image, and likeness. And that's what I think you and I were hoping for the entire time. The cheerleader example, right? The student athletes who were allowed to take advantage of NIL before were cheerleaders, because that wasn't an NCAA championship sport. And so they were able to sign name, image, and likeness deals. They were the original influencers. And what we wanted was for student athletes in NCAA sports to be able to be treated like the other students. So for Donald Delahaye to be able to have his YouTube channel. And so being able to see that has actually finally happened in year 4, I think is really significant. and it feels good. I think that things are going to be changing specifically. Changing especially under the House policy. I think you're going to see more student athletes stick around if they're guaranteed some money. They don't have to jump in the portal to get it. They're guaranteed to have something from the school, most likely. The school likely isn't going to be running them off. So we will see more roster continuity, I think, in the coming years because students will be excited to stay where they are, be rewarded accordingly by if their school is going to be, spending up to the cap.
Here's the other thing too. What's the future of collectives now? Because as you can see, the Opendorse report, collective spending is fizzling out. So you just said $1.3 billion, which was the highest it's ever been since 2021. Next year, it's taking a 75% cut, maybe more, 80%
Yeah.
cut. It's going down to, the projection is 227 million. But
I think that that's because schools like Ohio State, schools like Texas are bringing their operations in house. They're not going to be
right.
spending in excess, likely, of their like Buckeye Sports Group.
I'm curious if there's going to be. You're right, and that's exactly it. It's because like you said, there's going to be college payments of 1.5 next year, 1.6, then 1.7, 1.8. That's all being taken away from the collectives, or the collectives that currently exist are going to move in house and work directly with the schools. I'm curious if there's still going to be any sort of leftover for additional collectives who don't move in house that still pay some of these athletes, or the additional contracts with athletes, or are there going to be limitations now because these athletes are with collectives in house with the school, they're preventing these athletes from going elsewhere and using other collectives and other, sourcing money elsewhere. So the commercial is continuously going up. That's got a slight crescendo. You obviously have the collegiate money now popping in, and these schools are allowed to pay these athletes with the cap. And then your collectives are fizzling out from 1.3 billion to, in 5 years, it's 77 million. That's reverting back to virtually nothing. So I'm curious to see if some collectives that don't necessarily go in house, what happens to them? Do they revert back to some sort of maybe athletic donor or something different where they still work with the schools? I'm curious, but or maybe a lot of these schools wrap their arms around all of the collectives and work with them together.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting thing to track going forward. So,
One thing, Taryn, I did notice too. I'm curious what you thought. So obviously, the you mentioned the cheerleaders and the I'm just trying to say, like, the non highlighted sports that we've always talked about, right? So
the non-revenue
the
sports.
non-revenue sports. I mean, even some of the revenue sports, so like women's basketball, who takes the cake for the women's side for massive amounts of commercial exposure. There are some other sports that are rising. I think volleyball was one of the big ones that this Opendorse report showed went up 150% in terms of growth earnings. What other, what's the exposure going to be for those non-revenue, not necessarily non-revenue, but the non, large grossing revenue sports?
Yeah, I think that that's going to be dependent on an individual student athlete's social media prowess. And I think that that's why it's so important to have people like Sam Green, who we've had on this show, who really teaches student athletes how to take advantage and build their brand and create an online footprint that allows them to be marketable for this commercial paper. And so, yeah, I think that that's going to continue to be important, almost as important as your on-field play, because I think that they work together.
I think, and I think, I'm talking like certain athletes too who are still. I think this poses a serious future for the college athlete for actually making a really good amount of money. We've seen that already, and changing their decision on whether or not they're going to go professional for certain athletes. Why would I run the risk of being a 5th-round draft pick if I can still stay here and make $3, $4, $5 million a year? So I think the next thing is, what is the future of transfers? Are they going to implement the 1-year sit out rule? Are they going to have what's going to impact eligibility? There's still the NCAA bylaws that actually restrict certain athletes from winning non-college awards. We've talked about this with tennis, with the UNC athlete who won the U.S. Open and had to forfeit the earnings a couple years ago because it was a violation of NCAA bylaws and you would lose eligibility. There's still like the eligibility piece of this that I think has to get wrapped up into a nice bow. We actually have NIL guidelines now. This was the first year that the NCAA bylaws implemented their guide rails, if you will. So I think there's still a lot more that has to happen. But it's good. To me, it looks good for the future of money that's being involved. It's just in general. But there's still some T's that have to be crossed and I's that have to be dotted, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's put a pin in that one. Obviously, so much more to track. We're entering this new era and excited to be continuing to talk about it. Let's close here with one of our favorite segments, what to watch for. We're heading into July 4th. What are you keeping an eye on, Mike?
What am I keeping an eye on? I think what I'm excited for is Major League Baseball's All-Star break. I think this is an interesting year for me. Non-legal, anything, but this is the first year in a while that baseball seems kind of upside down. You still have like your Giants, like you've got the top teams, but there's a lot of these other teams that are still like in the mix and fighting for it. And it's I don't know. It's gonna be curious for me to see, like for instance, Gleyber Torres left the Yankees in kind of a not necessarily tumultuous, but like the Yankees didn't want to pay him because they thought he had too many problems. They thought the downside was far worse. And now he's an all-star starter for the first time with the Tigers. The Tigers are obviously a great, up-and-coming organization. The Orioles have just absolutely tanked after last year being amazing. The Toronto Blue Jays are actually looking like a really good team right now, and they're having a great stretch over the last month and a half. So it's just exciting. Baseball has always been one of those sports to me that there's always those top teams, but everybody that kind of sits in the middle, it makes it fun and competitive. Juan Soto is actually playing, up to par for the Mets. Finally, I knew he would. It was just only a matter of time. But Alonso's playing out of his freaking mind. Like there's a lot of good things happening in baseball. Judge is playing probably the best season of baseball I've ever seen in my life. Mike, you can cut that out. I didn't mean to. I said it's just amazing. I was just texting my dad and I was like, Judge is kind of like slumping, in the last like 15 games or so, and he's still hitting 360, 31 home runs with like 75 RBI. Like it's slashing a 1100 OPS. It's just it's crazy to me, like the talent of baseball right now. It's fun to see.
Yeah, I'd throw the Braves in there, even though they've beaten up on the Mets a little bit. That it's surprising that they've been down as well,
Yeah.
And then they've lost two of their better starters last year's NL Cy Young, Chris Sale, and Spencer Schwellenbach, who's been fantastic, and the Mets can't hit him at all. He also has a broken elbow, so pretty crazy. I think it's awesome that the Subway Series is happening July 4th weekend. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Mike, beginning of June, the Mets and Yankees were like neck and neck for best record in baseball, and they've both been horrible for a month. And they both really need this series. This is
Yeah.
going to be a very compelling weekend of baseball. Yankees took 2 out of 3 earlier in the year when the two teams faced off. I don't have a what to watch for. Obviously, Independence Day is a great
Joey
holiday.
Joey Chestnut back on the saddle for Nathan's competition. That's my what to watch for.
That's right. And you know, a wonderful day, and hope everyone has a good one. And one thing that really struck me this week is Liverpool, Diogo Jota, very similar to Johnny Gaudreau, young player, was killed in a car accident today with his brother. And so, you know, life very precious. So hope that everyone will make the most of this weekend and be safe and
make good
really
decisions,
enjoy.
drive safe.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything else, Mike?
No.
All right.
Marcus Stroman making his comeback against the Mets in Game 1.
All right. Well, we'll be watching that. And thanks everyone for listening as always. And we'll see you next time on another episode of Conduct Detrimental.